funny how fast things can flip. One moment you're part of something, laughing, sharing meals, feeling like you belong. And then, in an instant, you're not. You're standing there, staring at a closed door, wondering if you ever belonged at all. That was my Friday night. Actually, no, that was the end of my 2-year relationship with Lena, and the moment I realized her family never saw me as anything more than an unnecessary extra. It wasn't some explosive fight. No screaming, no dramatic confrontation. Just a dinner table, a few carefully chosen words, and silence that said more than anything else could. I walked out. Didn't argue, didn't defend myself, just left. And when I woke up the next morning to 27 missed calls and 5 voicemails, I thought just for a second that maybe, just maybe, Lena had realized what happened. Maybe she was calling to apologize, to say she made a mistake, to tell me she had finally chosen me over them. But I was wrong. Lena and I had something real, or at least I thought we did. We met in college, one of those easy connections, bonding over old movies, long hikes, late-night talks about nothing and everything at once. She was the kind of person who could make a bad day better just by being around. And yeah, she was beautiful too, in that effortless way that made my heart skip every time she laughed. Her family, though, that was always a thing, the Callahans. Picture perfect from the outside. Big house, perfect lawn, holiday cards that looked straight out of a catalogue. They had money, status, the kind of presence that made people listen when they spoke. But something always felt off. Her dad, Richard, had this way of looking at you like he was scanning your resume. A lawyer, the kind who never wasted words, but when he spoke, it was always a statement, not a conversation. Her mum, Diane, was the type who never let a guest's glass stay empty. Smiling, polite, always hosting, but beneath it there was this coolness. Like everything she did was part of a performance, and I was just another person sitting in the audience. And then there was Amanda, Lena's older sister. Amanda was the wild card, the one they called artistic, passionate. I just called her exhausting. Every room she entered became about her. If there wasn't already drama, she'd make sure there was, and for some reason, she always had this way of zeroing in on me. From the start, I felt like I was being evaluated, like there was some invisible checklist I wasn't even aware of, and no matter what I did, I never quite passed. But it was subtle, at first, and I convinced myself that if I just tried hard enough, if I was patient, if I proved myself, they'd come around. I was wrong again. It wasn't outright hostility. That would have been easier to recognize. Instead, it was small things, little digs, casual comments, questions that felt more like tests. Richard, every time we had dinner, "So, Nathan, remind me again, what exactly do you do?" I was a software engineer. He knew that. I'd told him a dozen times. Lena had too. But he always asked with that slight emphasis on do, like my entire career was some kind of vague, unimpressive hobby. Diane's version was softer. "Oh, Nathan, you're hardly eating. Did I not make enough of your favorite?" It didn't matter if my plate was full. The point was to make me feel noticed, but not in a good way. And Amanda, she was the worst. She'd latch onto anything that made me feel small. "You still play video games, isn't that kind of childish for your age?" Or if I mentioned our weekend plans, hiking, sounds exhausting, but I guess you two are into that kind of thing. There was always this underlying message. "You don't belong here, you're different." Less. Lena tried, she really did. She'd cut in with a laugh. "Come on, guys, give him a break." Sometimes she'd call them out. "Mom, don't do that. Amanda, that's not fair." But it was like trying to stop the tide with a teaspoon, and after a while I started shrinking. I spoke less at their dinners. I hesitated before answering Richard's questions, knowing he was just waiting for a reason to poke holes in my words. I let Diane's comments slide, pretended Amanda's digs didn't bother me. I told myself it wasn't worth it, that they were just a little difficult, a little protective of Lena, that it would get better. But deep down I knew the truth. It was never going to get better. By now I knew how their dinners worked. Show up, smile, sit through the conversations that were never really for me. Try not to flinch at the subtle jabs. Leave feeling just a little smaller than when I arrived. But that night was different. I felt it the second I walked in. The air was thick. Something unspoken hanging between them, like they had already decided how the night was going to end. And I was just waiting to find out what my role was. Dinner started normally enough. Richard talking about some case he was working on. Diane bringing up her latest charity event. Amanda complained about her art being misunderstood. And then it shifted. Richard leaned back in his chair, eyes locked on me, that smooth, lawyer-like tone slipping into his voice. "So, Nathan, Lena tells us you've been looking for a new job." It wasn't a question. My stomach tightened. I hadn't told them. But Lena, she must have mentioned it, the way she did, open, honest, trusting. I nodded, keeping my voice light. "Yeah, just exploring options. Nothing concrete." Richard's lips pressed together like he was holding back a smirk. "Options, right? And what kind of options are we talking about?" Something about the way he said it made my pulse pick up. Same field, software, just seeing what's out there. Silence stretched for a second too long. Then Diane, in that soft, practiced voice, "Oh dear, that sounds uncertain. Don't you worry about stability." And then Amanda, perking up like a cat spotting a mouse. "Yeah, like, what happens if you don't find anything? What would you even do?" It wasn't concern, it was entertainment. They were enjoying this. I felt heat crawl up my neck. "I'll figure it out," I said. "I always do," Richard scoffed. "Figure it out. That's not exactly reassuring." And then Amanda, because Amanda always took things too far, dropped the bomb. She tilted her head, eyes wide, innocent, but her words, they cut deep. "Nathan, honestly, sometimes it feels like you're just extra weight." The room went silent. I felt it, something inside me snapping, breaking, splintering apart. I turned to Lena. She wasn't looking at me. Her head was down, her fingers tracing the edge of her plate. She didn't say anything, didn't defend me, didn't push back, just silence. And then Diane, delivering the final blow with that cold, clipped tone. "Amanda has a point, Nathan. We've been patient. We've tried to be welcoming, but frankly, we don't need you. You're always in the way." There it was. The thing I had always feared. Spoken aloud, clear, unapologetic. And Lena? Nothing. Just silence. I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor, the sound sharp, jarring. I looked at each of them. Richard, Diane, Amanda. Their faces blank, expectant. Like they were waiting for me to beg, to argue, to prove myself one last time. And then I looked at Lena. For the first time that night, her eyes met mine. But there was nothing there. No regret, no apology, no fight, just emptiness. And that's when I knew I didn't need them either. I turned and walked out, no words, no parting shots, just gone. Out of their house, out of their lives, out of whatever illusion I had been holding on to. And I didn't look back. The night blurred after that. I don't remember the drive home, just the feeling in my chest. Something hollow, something raw. I packed a bag. I didn't think about it, didn't plan. Just threw some clothes into a duffel, grabbed my keys and left. Not even to my own apartment. I checked into a cheap motel on the edge of town. Somewhere anonymous, somewhere far from them. I turned off my phone, crawled into bed, stared at the ceiling until the first light of morning crept through the curtains. When I finally woke up, the weight of it all came crashing down. The dinner, the words, the way Lena had just let it happen. I reached for my phone, hesitated, then turned it on. And it exploded. 27 missed calls, 5 voicemails, all from Lena. For a moment, just a moment, I felt something stupid, something fragile flicker to life in my chest. Maybe she realized. Maybe she regretted it. Maybe she was calling to apologize, to say she should have defended me, that she didn't mean it. I played the first voicemail. Her voice was tight, on the verge of tears. "Nathan, please pick up. I don't know why you left. We were just talking. My parents didn't mean anything by it. They just worry. Please, just call me back." Click. I stared at my screen. Just talking. Didn't mean anything by it. I pressed play on the second message. Her voice was more urgent now. Where are you? Everyone's worried. Mom and Dad are really upset. Amanda's Amanda, but even she thinks you overreacted. Just come home, okay? We'll talk about it. We'll smooth things over. Smooth things over. Like it was just some misunderstanding. A little bump in the road, not a full-blown emotional execution. The third voicemail was shorter, sharper. Nathan, this is ridiculous. Answer your phone. My parents think you're being dramatic, that you're making a bigger deal out of this than it is. Just call me back and stop being so difficult. Difficult? I was difficult because I walked out after her family told me they didn't need me, because I didn't sit there and let them tear me down piece by piece. I almost didn't listen to the fourth voicemail, but something in me, maybe morbid curiosity, maybe some deep, twisted need to hear what they really thought, made me press play. This time it wasn't Lena's voice. It was Diane's. Cold, measured. Every word precise, like she was reading a legal statement. Nathan, this is Mrs. Callahan. We are disappointed in your behavior last night. It was immature, childish, and frankly rude to simply walk out without a word. It was unacceptable. However, there was a pause, a shift in tone, something almost calculating. We are willing to overlook this lapse in judgment for Lena's sake. We understand you are going through a difficult time with your job situation, and perhaps you were simply overwrought. Therefore, we are extending an invitation for you to return. We are having a family brunch tomorrow at 11. We expect you to be there, to apologize for your outburst, to reassure us that this type of behavior will not be repeated. We believe in forgiveness and second chances, Nathan. But do not misunderstand this invitation as a sign of weakness. It is an opportunity for you to make amends, to prove that you are capable of maturity, and to demonstrate that you are worthy of Lena. We expect you to be there. 11 a.m. sharp. Click. Silence. I just sat there, staring at my phone. Worthy. That was the word that stuck. After everything they said, after everything they did, they wanted me to apologize, to grovel, to prove myself. And then I realized what was off about Diane's voice. That subtle, hidden thing beneath all the cold calculation. It wasn't disappointment, it wasn't condescension, it was desperation. I didn't understand it at first. But then I saw the last voicemail. I pressed play. Lena's voice, frantic, almost hysterical. Nathan, where are you? Mom is freaking out, Dad's yelling. Amanda's actually being helpful for once, which is even weirder. Just, please call me back. She exhaled sharply. It's the sprinkler system, Nathan. It's completely broken. And Dad can't fix it. And the landscaper can't come until next week. And the garden is going to die. Mom's prize-winning roses are already wilting. Please, you're the only one who knows how to fix it. Please just come back and fix the sprinklers. We'll talk about everything else later. Just, please. 11 a.m. brunch and the sprinklers, please. Click. I blinked. It wasn't about me. It was never about me. Not about my feelings. Not about my place in their lives. It was about the damn sprinklers. For 2 years, I had been fixing things for them. Their Wi-Fi, their smart TV, their sound system, their thermostat. Every time something broke, I was the one they called. Because Richard wasn't the kind of man who got his hands dirty. Diane only knew how to host. Amanda couldn't even change a light bulb without help. And Lena? Lena just watched. She appreciated it. Sure, she'd give me a smile, a quick, thanks, babe, but she never really saw it. Never saw how much time and effort I put into fixing every little thing. I wasn't a person to them. I was useful. And now that something was broken, something they couldn't fix, suddenly, I wasn't extra weight anymore. Suddenly, I wasn't in the way. Suddenly, I was indispensable. The irony was so thick it was almost funny. They had spent years making me feel small, unwanted, unnecessary. And now they needed me. Because the Callahans' perfect little world was falling apart, and I was the only one who could put it back together. I deleted every voicemail, turned off my phone, took a long, hot shower, put on my clothes, ones that didn't try to impress anyone, ones that just felt right. I checked out of the motel, got in my car, and I drove. Not back to my apartment, not back to Lena, definitely not back to the Callahans. I drove in the opposite direction, toward the mountains, toward the open sky, toward something new. I don't know where I'm going, yet I don't have a plan. But for the first time in a long time, I feel free. And I'm never fixing their damn sprinklers, not now, not ever.